Hello, Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Sarah from DD Politics, Geopolitics, DD Geopolitics. That's important. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon, hanging out again with Sarah from DD Geopolitics, which, if I remember, why do I always get it wrong? I say Don Boss, and the first part of it is I say De Bushka, but it's like
Devushka.
Devushka. There we go. I just screwed the whole thing up. So it just sounds like an American trying to pronounce a Russian word. And that's all you need to know. All right, Sarah. So let's get going. Let me ask you this before we get started, just in general. Your thoughts on the whole Istanbul negotiations? Have you been keeping up with it?
Yes,
go ahead. Okay, go ahead. Let me get your thoughts on that.
That was like Christmas morning. I was so excited for yesterday because I streamed yesterday. So I was like, this is how funny it is. I didn't prep for yesterday at all because I'm gonna wake up and they're gonna have all this stuff from Istanbul for me to talk about. And then the talks didn't happen because Zelensky was acting like a total jerk. So I was like, oh, I got to go into this, like just totally winging it. But they happened today. So I was really excited to see any sort of progress and to find out that there was none to really speak of. But I'm very enthralled or happy with Russia's response and actions to the day.
Yeah, it seems to me that this is an easy one and it's kind of hilarious in a way, because here's what happens. It's 2021, December, Russia sends a list of things. Hey, here's our concerns. We need to talk about them. The response from NATO was, you don't get a say in it. The response from the Biden administration was, this is not even a start. We can't even begin to start here, right? Okay, so the war starts. And every 6 months or so, they'll be like, well, what in the world does Russia want? And they'll be like, they'll pull them out and they'll read them again. Oh, these are the things that we want. All right, well, let's do some negotiating, Russia. What do you have to say? And they'll be like, let me pull this document out from 2021.
Same thing.
These are the things that we want. No matter how many times I don't know. Do you think they'll take a ceasefire? Russia's like, remember that document we keep giving you over and over again? Oh, okay, fair enough. I got a better idea. And they just throw perhaps unconditional ceasefire. And we went in here. So we go to so-called negotiations. Russia really, they didn't even need to show up. Certainly they did. There were a number of reasons, and I think it was wise. But they could have had an empty desk with that piece of paper on it. And just a note, sign here or we're going to keep going. That's Absolutely. The other part of it. To say that they've been consistent, they made their position clear. You've expanded to our border. You're threatening us. Cut it out or we're going to fight.
Exactly. I think you and I discussed this last time I was on. We've talked about how these haven't changed. Why do we need to keep on having iterations of peace talks if you know that the demands haven't changed? But then today they kind of did. I think that one of the mediators actually said the next time we come back, it's not going to be 4 territories. It's going to be 5.
And I've heard 8. I've heard different
then
numbers.
They said 8 after that.
But if you remember, in the very beginning, when the deal went bad in Istanbul, I think it was Lavrov who said back then, okay, that was the first deal. The next one is going to be worse. They said something to the effect of, every time we have to go through this again, it ain't going to get better. You're going to get a worse deal every single time, to the point where it ain't going to be no deal. Actually, this isn't really a deal. This is, we have needs for our security. We need these needs met. Either they get met, one through diplomatic means, or they'll get met through force of arms. Yep. That's really all it is, isn't it?
Exactly. They said it. They reiterated again today and said, we're prepared to fight as long as this takes. Are you talking 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? We're ready to stay in this fight for as long as it takes. And they're not trying to discourage the EU. They're just letting them know, we'll just keep going. Exactly what you said. It was Lavrov that said it will just keep getting ticked up every single time we have to go through this. And then after the today's meeting, after the 5 reply, they said maybe it'll be 8. So they're just going to keep ratcheting up. It's clear who has the cards. It's clear who has the leverage, and it's certainly not the Ukraine.
Well, it's interesting to watch these so-called negotiations, because what you see is, one side that has the kinetic advantage. You're on Russia's border. They have the more powerful military, and clearly the other side is both, vacuous and inept. I mean, they don't have the right now. When you look at the NATO coalition, as it were, they're intellectually bankrupt. They're morally bankrupt.
For sure.
And they're kinetically bankrupt. The France just said, we got nothing else to give you. We're all out. Okay. But they're negotiating as though they have the advantage. Yeah. So they're negotiating like, okay, you got to give us what you want right away. And Russians are like, it's like a schoolyard bully that says something, and then the kid next to him says, "You're going to make me?" That's the way it is. Mm-hmm. You better do this. And Russia's like, well, if you can make us do it, we will. Other than that, no. And I don't think you can make us.
They can't. And they're trying to do like little petty things, death by 1,000 cuts, but that's not going to deter Russia either. I mean, they had the issue with the ship this week being boarded by Estonia, or being attempted to be boarded, or whatever the fiasco was. Multiple terrorist attacks have occurred on Russian soil. That's not going to deter Russia. So unless you have the actual military force to force Russia out, then they're not going to leave. Like, it's a very cut and dry. I don't understand. I'm at the point, I don't know how the Russians are. I'm sure they're the same, but I'm at the point where I'm like, are you guys okay? Like, why do the EU, what are you, this, are you guys okay? Because they're just cutting off their nose to spite their face. It's a very, I think that they can't wrap their minds around that they're losing. They can't wrap their minds around that.
I think there's a number of things here. There's a number of reasons: philosophical, cultural, intellectual. But here's one, and this is not the only reason, but it's part of it. Particularly when you look at the Germans, in the UK, which, let's face it, they're historically, that's kind of the same. People don't realize Anglo-Saxon, Anglican Saxons, that's German, Germanic, and English. You know what I mean? There's inextricably tied in so many ways, and that they have a racial hatred for the Russians. You know what I mean? That, to look at the Baltics and etc. Right? These people, I'll put it to you like that, and I heard it put like this one time before. A person who has like bulimia, or one of these diseases where they eat, right? They don't eat because they're hungry. They eat to quell anxiety. Mm-hmm. And if you're hungry, you can get full, but your anxiety never gets quelled. So when you eat to quell your anxiety, you just keep eating no matter how full you get, because the act of eating is what you feel will quell the anxiety, even though it doesn't. So you keep doing more, hoping it'll quell the anxiety. No matter how much you do it, it never does, right? Okay. So you're not acting to to take in nutrition. You're acting to quell anxiety. Okay. They're angry. There's hatred for the Russians for a lot of reasons, but so everything they do against the Russians is not to do something. It's not
right.
to protect themselves from the Russian. It's not to contain the Russians. It's to quell their anxiety of their hatred and their anxiety towards all things Russian. And since they're doing that to deal with their anxiety and their hatred for the Russians, and that anxiety can never be quelled, so they can never back down.
Well, that's part of the irrationality of liberal governments that have authoritarian or fascist slants, which is a lot of the EU. That's the way that they build up their enemy. They keep it irrational. The enemy is so stupid, right? Russians are so backwater. They don't have running water. They don't even have roads. They stole toilets, but they're also so strong that at any minute they could cross that border and take over Estonia. Like, that's the irrationality of these sort of regimes. And that's by design. That's not because they're confused. That's by design.
Well, and I think particularly the ruling elite in Europe, I think their nature is fascist. The nature of the ruling elite, if you look at them historically, the ruling elite's culture is very fascist, it's very totalitarian. And what happens is, when they start running into adversity, when they have economic problems, when they have all kind of problems, that fascism expresses itself more profoundly, shall we say. And since the Russians are next door, there's an old, if I, the old psychological term that says you deny, project, attack. It's not me, it's you, and then I attack you. Like the person that hates gay people or something. It really despises gay. The person that most hates gay people more than anything else, usually because they're like have some gay tendencies or something, and it causes them to really hate gay people so much so that they become the anti-gay. You ever notice this? There'll be like some preachers, the anti-gay activists. And you're like, what, dude? What's all? And then something comes out that he's like running around, yes. And you're like, oh crap! I should have saw that coming, right? He's in the airport grabbing somebody or something, and that is, they project that fascism, that militarism, and that violence onto Russia. And then they say they're going to come attack us. They hate us. They just want to bomb us. They want to do all that. When it's like they're that totalitarianism and that fascism that they project it onto the Russians and then say we've got to defend ourselves from the Russians.
Well, I'm actually reading a book right now that talks about this. It's called Fascism, the Career of a Concept. And it says that basically these Western European and American regimes are eventually going to, they're saying that fascism happens when capitalism doesn't naturally progress into socialism or socialist democracy, social democracy. So that's the concept that he's pushing. And if, like in the case of Russia, the chance of Russia backsliding into fascism is very nil because Russia had a socialist stage. These countries that haven't and are now experiencing late stage capitalism are going to have a tendency towards fascism. And they are. They're getting more authoritarian, more irrational, more militarily aggressive.
I make the argument, to be quite frank, that the United States has always been a fascist country. That it has had a veneer of democracy and a veneer of freedom and things like that. But you start here. You had slavery. Can you possibly have slavery and not be a fascist country? Can you have slavery as an institution in your country and argue that your country is not fascist as it does that? In my opinion, the answer is clearly during slavery, we were fascist. Look at the things that the United States have done. Go to Vietnam. Oh, we've got to kill these communists. You killed 3 million people. You bomb Cambodia, 800,000 dead there. You go to, if you look at the trail of blood, Indonesia, if you look at the genocide after genocide, when you look at the actions that the United States have taken to slaughter people by the hundreds of thousands of millions, number one. Number two, every time the United States overthrows a government, look who they put in charge. An absolute fascist. They overthrow a government and they put a pure fascist in power. So my argument is that at its heart and at its soul, the U.S. empire is a fascist empire, but it really has to, at best, hide it from the people there and give them the illusion, the veneer of democracy and freedom and all that crap, even though it goes around the world slaughtering people and installing fascist dictators.
Literally. Amen. And we're even doing it now. Look at who we're cozying up to. We're cozying up to Bukele is a totalitarian dictator. You can like him. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or he's a bad guy. He's definitely a totalitarian or has authoritarian leanings dictator. We helped install him and helped keep him installed. We're cozying up to al-Sharaa, who is Squirrel calls them, what does she call them? Is ISO-fascists or ISIS fascists. We're closing up to him. We like Bib. Well, we're pretending to fight with Bibi, but we like Bibi. Zionism is the best iteration in front of us of fascism.
Yep.
We could see. And Zelensky, who, while he doesn't really have, he might now, he didn't really have fascistic characteristics. His regime surely did. Yeah. So yeah, we are antagonistic towards the more communal or communistic, and they might be authoritarian. China's a bit authoritarian. Russia can be authoritarian in some instances, but we're very antagonistic towards them.
I argue this about China. The things that, as an example, this is what I argue. As an example, the United States says, oh, they're authoritarian. They won't let this and that on their internet. They won't people see this and that. Now, the United States comes out and admits that the CIA has these programs, but they're going online to attack China, to confuse the people, to do anti-China stuff. So the U.S. says, hey, we've got a CIA. They admit we had a CIA program and their job was to online attack for China. Then China says, we're going to cut off Google and some of this other stuff. And the US says, they're authoritarian. They're cutting off. Well, they damn sure have to cut them off because the United States are going to use these inroads on the internet. This is my argument. The United States will use these inroads on the internet to attack you. And when you close those inroads off that they can't use to attack you, they will then play the victim and say, you're denying your people the opportunity to see things on the internet. No, they're shutting off the inroads that the CIA used them to attack. So I argue that here's what I argue. There was recently a poll. 98% of the Chinese people approved of their government. I cannot call a government authoritarian, to be frank, if 98% of the people approve. That whatever they do, they're doing with the explicit approval of their people. And the people are like, this is what our government needs to do to keep us safe from those lunatics over there in Washington, D.C. So we're down with it. So I would say they're acting in concert with what their people want. So I consider totalitarianism, fascism, authoritarianism, things that are done where the government suppresses the people because the people wouldn't approve of what the government's saying.
Okay. I mean, I don't have a negative bias against totalitarianism, yes, but I don't necessarily view all authoritarianism as negative. So when I say China might be authoritarian, I definitely don't mean it in a negative way. I mean that going down and making that woman apologize for saying the N-word on the street is good for social cohesion. But that's a little bit authoritarian. But I agree with those sorts of tactics because exactly what you said. It keeps the social cohesion and it keeps the sort of discord that is very much Western at bay. I mean, ask anybody in China, do you hate that you have the Great Firewall? They'll say, don't you feel like you're trapped in? And they say, it's not to keep us trapped, it's to keep you out. So they know very much about what the game here is.
Yeah, and it's I think that if you look at what Europe has become, you know what I mean? Look at Europe now. I mean, somebody like posts a stern, or angry post towards somebody online, and they come to their house and knock on the door and lock them up and fine them for something that's, they literally, Yanis Varoufakis was going to Germany for some pro-Palestinian thing. So they said, you can't come to our country. So he said, okay, well, I'll do a Zoom meeting. Nope, you can't even come to our country on Zoom. They would not allow him to participate in a Zoom in an now. And what are the people on this Zoom meeting doing? They're protesting genocide. Now, you want to talk about totalitarianism and authoritarian, you know what I mean? They're literally going up against genocide, and you're like, no, we can't have that. You can't come here and do that. You'd be opposing genocide.
Well, exactly. I mean, and that's, again, the irrationality of these liberal democracies that have very fascist tendencies. And that happens when they sort of start losing the grip on power. They become more irrational. That's why we're seeing Facebook posts are getting old ladies put in jail in the UK, because the UK understands that power is slipping. The support of the people is definitely not behind you. And that's what you see, these actions. That's telling Yanis that you're actually incredibly powerful. You're so powerful, and what you're about to say is so important that we actually have to do this completely petty and irrational thing to silence you. I mean, that's the length they're willing to make themselves look so stupid, so juvenile. That tells you something, that Yanis has a lot of power and that the power of the others is definitely slipping. And that's a good sign. I always tell people, like, it sucks and we'll get through it, but it's also a good sign. I said that about the anti-Semitism laws. I said, this is a good sign. This is very irrational, very out of control, doesn't make much sense. This means that they're losing power. This is a good sign.
Yeah, it's a good point. I agree with you. It's, one of the things it shows is insecurity. I'm a big believer in that. I used to talk to my daughter about that. And it's like, if somebody says, you're stupid, or you're a jerk, or you got a big forehead, you know how kids are, they'll tease you about something, right? If you're insecure, it bothers you. Oh, good darn. Oh, I feel bad. Oh, I wonder if I really do have a big forehead, or whatever. My feet are too big, or my nose is too big. You know how kids are, they're always going to pick something up. You know what I mean? Okay. If you're secure, As we have a saying in Zen, you throw a rock down a well and you don't hear a splash, right? Right. So it's you got a big forehead. Eh, eh, whatever. You know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
If you're secure, what do you care if somebody says, "Yeah, you're welcome to your opinion"? What do I care? Have a nice day. You go on, right?
Right.
You're insecure. It's, oh, do I really have a big forehead? You look in a mirror, let me measure my forehead, right?
Exactly.
Okay. If they were secure in their feelings about, oh, they're standing up for against anti-Semitism, when somebody said something, I don't like what's going on in Palestine with the Palestinians, they'd say, we feel like we're doing the right thing, but they
Right.
can't do that because they're so insecure, because they know their policies are not integrated with their words, these liberal words of goodness and spreading human rights around the world and all, but they know their policies are the exact opposite. So now what they're demonstrating to me is how insecure they are, which means they know that the people that are opposing what they're doing are right. So they got
Right.
to try to shut them up.
It's like the lady doth protest too much, right? Or trying to get ahead of something. Exactly. As somebody in the chat said, Anti-Semitism Awareness Act is a good sign. Holy shit. Yes, it kind of is in a way. Just exactly what Garland said. They're protesting so much. That tells you that they know that these opinions that they're trying to suppress are correct and will gain in popularity. So they're trying to suppress them before they do.
Well, and here's another thing why I would say they're a good sign. Look at what's happening with the numbers. Look at what's happening with Germany. They hate the AfD. I'm not pro AfD. I'm on the other end of the political spectrum. But here's my point: the people are getting sick and tired of it. How long can you suppress the people? When the government goes completely against the people, doesn't deliver anything, now the governments are like, well, we've got to build up militarily, which means we're going to have to cut social programs and all your health care, your school, all that stuff's got to get cut. And therefore we can build more military. You can say that, but you can see the numbers shifting. The recent election in the UK,
Right.
where Starmer's party and the Conservatives, all of them, they got slammed.
Wow.
While you can get away with it for a while, it's going to create a whiplash effect where people go so far about it that these people are not going to be able to cheat to hold on to their positions anymore, and they'll be bounced from government.
Exactly. And again, like these are all they're bad at the moment, but they're all good signs in the long term span of things. These people are losing on to power. The greater opinion is changing. I mean, with the poll that just came out from Pew Institute, 53% of adult Americans have negative views, unfavorable views about Israel. That's huge. That came out in the end of March, and then they really started freaking out. That's a good sign. They should be freaking out. They're not going to make the pendulum swing the other way anytime soon. So it's important to keep that sort of press on. These people will be out of office eventually, but we have to be consistent.
Yeah, and I think in Europe it's going to be sooner rather than later. I think most of these parties in Europe are not looking forward to the next general
Mhm.
election. None of them are, because they
Well,
don't
look
know
at what they're
what they're going to do.
doing in their
Yeah.
own countries as well as others. They're trying to prevent. They're so threatened by. They're even threatened by Vucic, who is a liberal. He's a soft liberal. They're so threatened by the likes of Orban and Fico in Slovakia, and that chance of Kalin in Romania, that they squashed that as soon as they could before, and they tried to do it again in Serbia to try to kind of rev stuff up. But that's a domino effect. You'll probably see that spread. The AfD in Germany, what they did to them is heinous. They're under now state surveillance. They can't run in elections. This is fascism it's crazy. You don't suppress your political opponent because you think that they're too fascistic or something. I don't know how a lesbian would be fascist, but that's neither here nor there. And they're not fascist anyway. It's a very and in that book that I was talking about, guys, again, it's the book is called Fascism: The Career of a Concept. They also talk about this, about how these sorts of they'll be suppressing their opponents and calling the opponents fascist, but they're the ones actually engaging in the authoritarian tactics. So that's what they're doing. They'll paint these nationalists who they're not fascists. These people are mostly nationalists and right-wing nationalists, and then they get painted as fascists, and now they're trying to keep all of that at bay.
And in America, we have a saying, if you want to make a book sell, ban it, right? And that's what they're doing with the AFD. If you want to make people vote for a party, ban the party. Tell them they can't vote for the
Right.
party. Have the people that they hate worse. I make this point, and how the liberals helped get a Trump elected. They charged him with everything they could. They charged him with a million different charges. They sued him. They did everything. And the more they did, what they didn't realize were people unhappy with the status quo. Very,
Right.
very unhappy. And here's the message you sent. The people that you really, really hate Trump. And at some point, people were like, well, if you guys hate him, he doesn't look like much to me. But if you hate him, we'll give him a shot. At least with nothing else, we got to poke it in your eye. If he does nothing, if he's just as crappy as he looks, we fixed you because we did what you hated. And in a way, it's the only punch they can take back at you sometimes is to vote for the person that you tell them you hate.
Exactly. It's like the kid with their parent. Everything that you like, I'm going to be anti because I need to rebel against this system in some form or fashion. And that was the best way to protest, at least for Americans. Trump was a protest about a protest candidate. And they should have learned from that. They never did. They continued to make the same mistakes all the way to 2024. Mistakes for them. I mean, people might support Trump, and that's not a mistake. But yeah, so this is kind of, it's common, and it happened in Germany. AfD gained an incredible amount of momentum off the election and then still held on to it, and they got really nervous, and that's why they said, nope, we're just going to call you fascist. Trump was kind of this bellwether that really scared the pants out of a lot of the EU liberals. Like, if we let somebody like that get into an election, they might win. So
yeah, well, see, one of the things that is of all these bad things that happen, there's some good. And the good, some people in the chat may not get, like when we say it's good that they're, doing some things. Oh my God, why would you say that? We're saying that in a paradoxical way. You know what I mean? We're saying that in that it's good because it shows that they're weak, and man, they're going to screw up too far now. And I think, darn it, I forgot where I was going with that. I hate when I do that. But anyway, you get my point. Oh, I know exactly where I was going. One of the things that I think is good that is happening now, there's people are waking up, and that is this. Take Germany. You've got the liberals, right? And the liberals are basically looking at the AFD saying, you guys are Nazis. And people are like, you're literally sending money to these guys in Ukraine that are goose stepping, covered with Hitler tattoos, that are screaming, hey, look at me, I'm a Nazi. And you're like, we got to support these guys. We got to give them money. They're open, proud Nazis. You send them a tank. If it doesn't have a swastika on it, darn it, they're going to paint one on it. And off they go to the Russian border, right? So you have people who are proud, open Nazis that you support. But you're saying that this guy, you can't get in office. Why? You're too dangerous. Why? Because you're a Nazi. Well, if I was a Nazi, you'd be giving me money, sending me to Ukraine. So apparently I'm not. Yeah. And so my point being that the fake virtue of the liberals is being exposed.
Exactly. It's that like artificial virtue signaling that like, I am aghast at this. How offensive. It's all projection. It's all feigned offense.
Well, the liberals are the most offended people in the history. Everything offends them. You ever notice that they're offended by everything? Anything you say to them is they find it offensive. Well, that's offensive to women. That's offensive to minorities. Right. That's offensive to whatever. But when you look at their actions, the thing I hate the worst, and everybody that knows my show, knows my show, knows what I hate the worst. I hate the worst. I despise Hollywood, and I despise every bit of it. And what I hate so bad is turning on every stinking commercial. And when a commercial comes on, I look up and I say, where's the Asian guy? That's what I see. Every commercial call, I go, "Where's the Asian guy?" Because I know there's going to be a gay person, a black female, a Latino person.
A mixed
I
couple, a
know a
gay
mixed couple. There
couple
we
with
go, a gay couple.
kids.
I know all that, and I'm like, "Oh, no Asian guy. Where's? Oh, there he is. There's the Asian guy.
Gotta
He's in
wait
the
for the
background,
Asian.
but he'll be in the front." You know what I mean? And you look at that. Then they make a movie, and there's like some people in a spaceship. Literally, I watched. It was like Netflix or something. So I watched this movie. Right, there are 4 people in a spaceship. They're going to Mars. An Asian guy, a black guy, a white female, and another person who I'm not sure if it was male or female, to be quite honest, but I think that was the point, right? That's the, but you watch these movies and they go all the way across 100 million light years to another planet, and they land on the planet. And on the planet, there's a group of people. And on the planet, one of them's white, one of them's black. And I'm like, how the hell did they do that? Oh, how did they know?
Always.
Oh,
It's a rainbow coalition.
That they were supposed to have a diverse group of aliens. I get it. Everywhere you go.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. Is the left, or the liberals, whatever you want to call them, lost their class consciousness. They lost the class lens of their party, and that's why people like Trump were able to pick up the working class so easily. Because I always say, back in the 90s, if you guys read Thomas Frank, who's excellent, you go read Listen Liberal. It's about how back in the 90s the liberals gave up on the working class and made it all about identity politics, and they're trying to shove this sort of false idea that if you are in a minority, you're automatically oppressed in like a class type system. And it just does not work like that. So we now have these like coastal elite academics that are in minorities that are like, I'm the oppressed class. And all the workers are like, what? So they move over to the right. And that's why you're seeing a lot of these issues, is that the right, or what we perceive to be the right, is gaining a lot of momentum because the left has completely lost the working class.
Well, they've redefined the left. What the liberals did was redefine the left.
That's
true.
True.
The left was trade unions. The left was anti-war. The left was very skeptical of concentrated power. The left didn't trust these big corporations and Wall Street. That was the left. That was always been the left, right? Didn't trust these big, powerful monopolies and blah, blah, blah. Now the left is, you got a rainbow flag, a Black Lives Matter mask, and you know what I mean, and something like that. Something on your a sticker on your car that says "We must all get along," and it's electric car, and you're drinking out of a Starbucks car. You know, those kinds of things that have nothing to do with people who are just trying to make a living, feed their families, sticking together against the powers. These are virtue signaling. These are, I'm a member of this group, I'm a member of this club. And so they redefined the left. And I would say this: they didn't per se give up on the working class in a way, because here's what they said: we still want to get them on our terms.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We want their votes, but what we want to say to them is, vote for us because we're standing up for indigenous women of color who are whatever. That's why you should vote for us. And that gets to this, that we are morally superior to everyone else.
Correct.
It's a moral superiority.
And I think people are exhausted with that moral superiority, because it's sort of like, I mean, look at we'll just use white men as an example. The pendulum in that demographic has swung completely. They're like, I'm tired of being blamed for everything, or I'm tired of never being the one that's kind of lavish pity upon me, etc. And I mean, they obviously are valid in their reasoning, but that's what happens. You keep catering to these people that are in the minority. And that's, I mean, not to say that anything against minorities, you're catering to the minority, you're going to lose the majority. That you can't keep both happy all the time. You can't elevate the minority above the majority. That's why they lost.
Right. And here's the thing: if we say minority or majority, the question becomes, how do we define it? Because when somebody says you're a minority, I say, no, we will consider myself a working class people.
Right.
The majority of the people are working class. I know my minority. Who's a minority? But the minority is the person who was born and somebody left them $100 million and they went to Harvard, and that's the minority. You know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned. So what they want to do is they want to define minorities and then they even make up new things for, like, yes, that person's a BIPOC. What the hell is a BIPOC? Black or indigenous person of color. They're not even Black people anymore. They're people of color. What does that mean? You know what I mean? And then, like, you see a person and their skin is kind of olive and you don't really know, they're whatever, they're part Italian and part Greek or something like that. And then they try to figure out a new term for them. And they always got to come up with a term for people, right? You whatever group, so that they can put you in it. But here's a term that they don't seem to ever come up with: working class.
Right.
That's a term that doesn't work in Hollywood. You know what I mean? And that's why I can't even watch the movies. I can't watch their advertisements. I can't watch any of that crap because I understand what they're doing.
Yeah, I can't watch fiction anymore for that reason either. It's so out of touch with reality and like their portrayals of real life are like nobody lives like this. It's always I always bring up the if you guys have seen Arrested Development when Lucille Bluth is like, well, it's a banana. What could it cost? $10? And it's like that's how these rich people are. Like Trump said he like didn't understand like groceries or something like that. Like this is how rich these people are. They have no idea we even exist, let alone like how we live. So of course when the left says, or the liberals or the Democrats say like working class, they mean like the gay barista at Starbucks. They don't mean like normal, even people of color. They don't mean like people like that are just normal, regular, everyday workers that aren't having the plight of the LGBTQ community in the front of their minds at all times. It's exhausting. And that's what happened, is that the majority, the regular people, got exhausted. It's exhausting.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I don't care if you're black, green, white, trans, or whatever. You have the same economic needs. You know what I mean? You need housing, you need education, you need healthcare. I could go on and on. The needs that you have, I can see 10 people walking down the street and they can be 10 different colors and 10 different genders, although I only really know of 2, but apparently there's lots more now that I've never quite figured out, right? All these people can walk down the street. They all got the same physical needs. Right. And if you talk to those people from that, let me just say this, because I'm, like I said, I'm to the left of all of them, but they're trying to understand it. I understand why Trump won. He talked their language. He talked a language that basically said to working class people, I'm not looking down on you. I don't see you as inferior. I hear what you're saying. I'm going to say the things you said. Now, not that he meant any of it. I don't think he did. I think he's a showman. But my point is, the liberal class couldn't even do that. They don't have the ability to even fake it anymore.
No, they don't. They don't even pay the lip service. They stopped with Bernie. Once they took Bernie out in 2016, I mean, whether you I caucused for Bernie, full disclosure.
Yeah,
I was a Bernie bro, Bernie bruh. I don't know what, but I loved Bernie in the 2016, and that was it for me. That was it. I was done after that. But if you watched, and I'm sure you would agree, is that Trump was able to adopt a lot of the lines that resonated with the majority from the Bernie Sanders campaign after he was forced to concede to Hillary Clinton. And that should have lit a fire under the ass of the Democrats. It didn't.
No.
Which really made me give up on that party completely after I saw that. Now their lessons learned from Biden tells me that or Kamala's loss tells me that I was correct in giving up on them in 2016. But that's exactly right, is that they can't even pay the lip service anymore. Now they're having like AOC rallies, or I don't even know what they're doing, but they can't even bother to just try to cater to them anymore. They really don't know what they're doing. They have no message.
No. And if you look at them, to be quite frank, the Democratic Party is Hollywood. You know what I mean? I mean, that really represents what they are. I was watching one of these Democratic Party things that I think I was watching Jimmy Dore, and they had it, right. And they're saying, okay, for these committees, the committees has to have a female and a person of minority status. You know, they were voting for people to lead committees or whatever. And then if all of the 3 people, it has to have a total of 6 people or 7 people. If 3 of them are one gender and then the 3 are the other gender, then the 7th person has to be a person of undetermined gender. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, I thought a political party was supposed to be like, how can we be effective? We got things we got to do, and we got to try. We just lost. We got the hell beat out of us. Who amongst us, I don't care who you are, can kind of help us figure out how to win? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Effectiveness. Nope. It's the process. We have to make this thing look like we got to have just the right number of this group, that group, and some group that we don't even know what it is, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no wonder you people are losing. And I am convinced that in 2028, they're going to run like a transgender or some person like that for at least vice president. Guaranteed. I'm convinced they're going to do it.
I mean, it's totally possible. And you know what I also see in the comments or in the chat, they're saying asking about BLM. And the thing about African Americans is they got saddled with all the minorities, right? The African Americans had their own sort of thing, and then they were like, nope, you got to take the queers and the Latinos, and now you're BIPOC. That's all of
Right,
you.
yeah.
So
They got shoved into this group.
Exactly. So they even sort of, for lack of a better word, like kind of whitewashed and just thrown you all together. The oppression's all the same. The solutions are all the same. The symptoms are all the same. And they've done such a disservice to so many people that you've seen African Americans, Latin Americans kind of not flock, but in significant numbers vote Republican. It's very, very interesting to watch them kind of sit on the sidelines of their own demise.
I'd say this. A lot of them didn't vote Republican. A lot of them voted for Trump. They didn't vote Republican. They voted for Trump, and that was it, right? Because I know a lot of people, they voted for Trump. And what was it like? In a lot of states, 25% of Black males voted for Trump. And look, bottom line, it was an economic decision. I'm not saying it was the right decision. I'm just saying it was an economic decision. They looked at it and they're like, man, the Democrats are running us to hell. They're terrible. We hate them. We'll give this guy a shot. It was when I listened to why people said, I said, well, I'm voting for Jill Stein, whatever. I said, but it's a logical decision to say, hey, economically, these people were terrible. Maybe this guy will be better. I don't think he will or won't, whatever. I don't know. I see the empire as a horrific empire. Good luck with all of that. But I understand your decision, right? And it wasn't a racial decision.
No,
it was an economic. They didn't say, well, I'm a Black male, therefore I must vote for this and that. My whole decision of everything I do is based on my identity. No, they're like, I'm trying to eat, dude. I got kids to feed, families to, bills to pay, and maybe it'll work out a little better. And they voted in a particular way. And that's the problem. The Democrats look at all of their voters like, they said that's how they separate them. Well, we got the Black vote, the this vote, the that vote, instead of saying, what do our voters need as a whole, as a group? Build a better mousetrap and the world will be the path to your door, right? Instead of dividing the world into 50 different groups, figure out what group, all of them. If you're a poor person, you're poor. Mm-hmm. If you can't pay your bills, you can't pay your bills. You're not sitting around there saying, hey, I'm a white, Black, green. You at the end of the month, you go to the grocery store and the guy says, you got an empty hand. Doesn't matter what color the hand is.
Right.
And what you're trying to do is figure out how you can put some money in that hand to pay the grocery guy. And that's what the Democrats seem to have completely lost touch with.
Well, the only time when you have the luxury of worrying about identity politics is when things are going incredibly well, which they were in the 90s for the Democrats. They had balanced the budget. Remember, they had a surplus, things where they were rolling high on the hog. I mean, whether you hate Bill Clinton or not, those were the golden years, or the last golden years of the Democrats. And that's when they switched. It was also profitable and kind of novelty to switch over to identity politics. But once things get real again, American workers don't have time to worry about identity politics. Exactly what you said. I think it's now 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck with minimal in their savings account. That's scary. Do you think that they care about Pride Month? No. They're worried about who's going to watch their kids when they get out of school in June.
Yep. And Bill Clinton, here's the thing. Okay, so he's in there and the economy's going good. So what does he do? Dismantles the New Deal banking laws. Yep. Hey, things are going well. What do? Well, we've got these New Deal banking laws, been in place since the 30s. It seemed to be helping things go pretty well. I know. Let's get rid of them. You know what I mean? How about NAFTA? We'll do some nice free trade agreements. Yep. He does NAFTA. And impoverishes 1.4 million Mexican farmers, and they come across the border, and he's like, hey, what are these Mexicans doing coming across the border? You know what I mean? So the thing is, when, I look at Reagan, I look at Clinton, I look at Bush, I look at Obama, and from the perspective of, and Trump and from the perspective of the neoliberal economic platform, they all talked a different game. But their economic platform was the same. And for people, well, it was better under the Democrats or better under the Republicans. I say, but the trajectory was the same.
Yeah.
Down 4 years, 8 years. And they tell us the Democrats went bad or the Republicans went down, but the trajectory stays the same, worse and worse and worse and worse.
It was always the lesser of two evils. We were all always saying, we're still electing evil. we just keep going the lesser of two evils. We're still evil all the way down, you know? We keep getting ratcheted up into sort of like into you said the trajectory is going down. I wholeheartedly agree, economically and socioculturally. It's just I don't know that there's anything that we could have done to prevent that. If it's a lesser of two evils, you're always getting evil. Maybe you're just stemming the tide a little bit, but it's eventually going to come anyway. That's one of the reasons why I did like Trump, for his accelerationist properties. I was like, let's get this over with. We've been in London in the serious decline since 2008. Let's get this done.
Yeah. Look, to me, I'll be quite frank. I felt like that the trajectory under the neocons in Biden's administration was straight to nuclear war. So I felt, to be quite frank, and there are those who will disagree with me, I felt like Trump was a better option. I didn't vote for him.
Yeah.
I voted for Jill Stein. But to be honest, if you had to ask me who was the better option, they're all bad, and imperialism is going to do its thing, and I'm going to oppose imperialism and blah, blah, on and on. Yes. All of those things are true. But I did feel like Kamala Harris in that group was a worse option than Trump. If you want to take the perspective of lesser of two evils, the Democrats have been arguing the lesser of two evils for all of these years. And it got to the point where they weren't the lesser. There couldn't even, an argument to me couldn't even be made that they were the lesser of two evils. So if they're arguing for the lesser two evils, they technically got what they wanted, because most people looked at them and looked at Trump and said, yeah, and they're like, he's horrible. And they're like, yeah, but you're worse.
Well, I don't think that they're even fascinated with the idea of good and evil anymore. They're just like, who's going to allow me to survive a little bit better? They don't even care about their morality anymore. Another mistake on the Democrats' part. They don't care about that either. And I don't think voters are really worried about person's moral standing anymore. That's why that feigned outrage that we talked about earlier just doesn't resonate with voters.
Yeah, I also think that, look, when you look at what's going on in Europe, right, with this totalitarian crackdown, censorship, right, I don't think that helped the Democrats. Because, I watched Matt Taibbi and various people in there being, interviewed and harassed by the Democrats. And when he'd say, well, this is a First Amendment violation, and they would just rake him over the coals. Wow, you're standing up for Russia or something crazy, right? And you're like, the man, like, you're a Democrat. There used to be a time when you argued on behalf of that you were the protectors of the First Amendment. And those darn Republicans, they were going to destroy the Constitution. And now, like, all of them really are.
They all are.
Again, if you're going to be the lesser of two evils, you got to have some area where when you looked at that, I'm like, well, when it comes to censorship, as bad as the Republicans are, and they are bad, you're worse.
Yeah, they are worse. But that's because that also ties into everything that we've discussed. It's because of that. They have to feign outrage, and they have to play identity politics. They put themselves in this corner. They don't have any other choice. They can't act outrageous like Trump can. They can't speak off the cuff like people in the Republican Party can, or the right-wing influencers can. They're not held to a different standard. They put themselves in a different box, and now they can't get out of it. Yeah, this whole free speech thing has gotten completely out of control on both sides. But they both define free speech as completely different things. So,
well, what we saw was this, to me, and the Republicans were like, no, you should have free speech when it comes to COVID and talking about Ukraine. Fair enough. But what about Israel? Nope. No free speech there. And you know what I mean? And the Democrats, well, you shouldn't have free speech about COVID or Ukraine or Israel. That's the only difference is, you count which one. It's like Jamal Thomas always puts it. It gets to the point of one less concentration camp. Vote for me. Yeah, but you've got 8 concentration camps to put me in. Yeah, but that guy's got 9. We got one less. So we're the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, I won't let you talk about Ukraine, or I'll let you talk about Ukraine. That other guy won't let you talk about Ukraine, and the 5 things I won't let you talk about. So at least I'll let you talk about Ukraine. That's kind of what it was, right? I mean, we went through the Ukraine. We all got banned and frozen and whatnot. We all went through that with the previous Democrat, and now we're getting the anti-Semitism laws. I'm actually shadow banned on Twitter right now because I exposed Grok being biased. So Grok let me know that it was lying about the white genocide in South Africa because Elon told it to. So I made a post about it, and I am shadow banned.
Yeah, well, at least you can make a post about it.
That's true.
I can't even make.
Yeah, they are still sticking to the freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. But yes, so So there's
Yeah.
that.
Well, what about I know at one time on YouTube you had been demonetized. Did they that is that still the case or
No, it was fixed. So the funny thing is that we asked to come back. We were like, could you at least tell us? Well, we have no problem removing the material that got us banned. And they said it's all of Aussie Cossack. So I had to remove every single video that had Aussie Cossack in it. I guess because he's like very, very banned. I'm not really sure. But yes, we're back on YouTube
how
and
long
we're
were you
monetized.
how long were you demonetized? Did you get shut down completely? What
Yeah,
happened
we
with
got
that? Well,
banned. It
what
was
happened?
about
Give us the story.
we got banned out of and said that we were insinuating like encouraging violence, and we figured it was because of our reporting on Israel. And I was like, that's strange because we're like a lot less sort of militant than a lot of people are. But okay, we just appealed it. We were like, all right, screw it, we'll appeal it and try to figure out what it is. And then they came back and they had all the Aussie Cossack videos checked off, and I was like, that is really strange. But I think it's because he got banned for COVID.
Oh, okay. Of all
So yeah,
things.
but yeah, we're back on YouTube.
I did want to. Oh, something I meant to ask you. I've been thinking about this lately. I'm asking this to some of my guests. Two things. What are your top couple of the channels that you like? What are your favorite channels on YouTube that you actually watch yourself?
I watch you. I watch Jamarl, and then I just watch true crime. I really don't watch a lot of streamers. I will if like something hot pops up, but I'm much more of a reader. I read a lot more people Substacks. I read the Times and the Wall Street Journal every day. But I stop in on like Nick's streams. I do like I go on the streams that I appear on, and then on mine I watch those. But I'm sorry, but I just don't have the attention span.
Interesting, because so many people I know are like now are so YouTube, man. People are like so glued. I know so many people that are so glued to their YouTube shows.
No, I mean, I
You
put it on
know,
for background noise, but that's about it.
I
I
like I tell you, you know, of course, I like the Duran.
I love the Duran. Yeah,
I
those guys
always
are
watch the
great.
Duran. I always watch those. But there is there's one I've been watching for a while, which a lot of people don't really watch it. You don't hear. I think they only got 20,000 now. It's growing fast. There is a channel and it's called Conversation Among the Ruins. Have you seen that channel?
No, I'm gonna look it up right
It
now.
is really good. It's one of my favorite channels. Really good. It's weird. It's weird. It's like this guy, young guy, you know, I don't know, he's maybe in his 20s, 30s, I don't know, whatever. And he says, my dad is really smart. And he's moved to the backwoods of Tennessee, and people need to hear how smart he is. And he just comes on and he goes, so dad, what do you think of this Istanbul stuff? And the guy's like a brilliant guy. And his like delivery, he's like, you know, like the old wise man, you know, son. You know what I mean? And you're like, where's his pipe? You expect him to take a pipe out, you know what I mean? And go like this and, you know, take a couple tokes off the pipe and then tell you. And he's really knows his shit. This guy is really smart, right? And I'm like, man, this is a great channel. And that has become like one of my favorite channels. And I'm like, I'm amazed. It's as good as any channel out there. And I'm amazed that that's not like, but I think it's going to be one of those multi-100,000 uh
Yeah, this is a really good concept. I'm looking at it right now. Are they Russian?
I don't know. I don't know. There we go. Conversation Among the Ruins. I'll
He
bring
says
it
his
up.
project is called Novlitsky. That's like a Russian or Polish. It's a Slavic name. Wow, this is cool.
All right. Good morning, Dad.
Good morning. Let me see. He always starts off, all right, good morning, Dad. Let me see if I can bring it up so people can see it. There we go. Let's see. I'm going to present it. There we go. That's it. Conversation Among the Ruins. My father's got a brilliant mind, but he keeps it hidden away in the backwoods of Tennessee. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I sit down for an hour with my old man and ask him what the hell is going on in the world, right? The Israeli-Palestine conflict and Russian-Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the information. And yeah, I think maybe he's Slavic. I don't know. But that's like become one of my favorite channels, Conversation Among the Ruins.
But I'm going to put it on for background noise.
Everybody I know, like I've told a couple friends of mine, you watch Conversation. What the hell is Conversation Among the
That's
Ruins?
a really good concept. I love that.
It's a really good show. That's I like that one. I like Of course, Andrei Martyanov.
Oh my God.
He's so funny.
So funny. I hopefully he'll have a show today after the talks in Constantinople, because I know he's probably got like some of the funniest things to say about it.
You know, it's that Russian humor.
It is.
Sergei Lavrov has it.
Yes.
You know, Maria Zakharova. There's that dry Russian humor.
Yes.
That is absolutely.
His is bad. His is bad.
He's so funny. Yes, Andre, I love his channel. There's another one, Neutrality Studies. You ever watch that? The guy named Pascal.
Well, now I'm like subscribing to all these channels over
Neutrality
here.
Studies is really good. Yeah, Pascal. I think he's in Japan. Really good channel. Excellent channel. He has some really good guests on there. He's a smart guy. That's a good channel. Everybody knows the basic channel. You know, Dialogue Works, Nima. I don't know if you ever watched that.
Yep, I watch
Nima with Dialogue Works. I like his channel. Countercurrents, that's Larry Johnson.
Yep.
Judge Knapp, of course.
Of course.
Judge Knapp, he's good. But I'd say my favorite, I watch a guy, you ever heard of a guy named Emil Kosman?
No.
He's Romanian, I think. Emilcosman. He's a funny guy, but he does a lot, and he covers a lot of stuff, covers stories in the news. I enjoy watching Emil Kosman. He's pretty funny. He's pretty good. But that's the thing about it to me. New media, you know, people are tuning out of CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and they're tuning into whatever. The Duran, Dialogue Works, Garland Nixon, DD Geopolitics. You know, people are like starting to say, I trust, I think it's the matter of trust. I think they trust like people like us.
It's also the way that we interact with people. You know, these MSM types have become the coastal elites that are up in their ivory towers. We're kind of down in the trenches in comment sections. People really enjoy that. That fourth wall has been removed for the most part because of how advanced we are in the internet. And it's important that we kind of interact with the people that we're disseminating information to. That helps to build trust as well. Forgotten History is fantastic, Mr. Wonderful, by the way. Forgotten History is another good
Forgotten History?
Channel. Yes, a really good channel on YouTube.
Interesting. Somebody put, I don't like it, Racket News. I'm not familiar with Racket. Who's Racket News? I think I know who that is. I can't remember. I know who the heck Racket News is. Gray Zone, well, of course, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's a must. That's, you know, a professional. But at any rate, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff out here. And of course, Jamal Thomas. Jamal Thomas is really doing good with that morning.
I don't know how he does it. He is a machine. He's like 3 hours a day, every single day. He's up from 6 to 9. Like, that is crazy. He is a workhorse. Not even that. He's got his mom working for him too.
And then he does the show, and then he cuts them all up into middle pieces, and it cuts the show all up into little pieces. And, you know, there's a lot of good stuff that he has. He has great guests.
He does.
Yeah,
he's really great. I don't know how he does it. He works his butt off.
Now, I'll tell you a guy, I don't always agree with him. There's nobody I always agree with, but and sometimes, you know, I think he's out in space, but sometimes nobody hits the nail on the head like the guy. Do you know who Shahid Bolson is, Middle Nation? Now, sometimes I'll be like, oh, come on, Shahid. No. But other times I'm like, nobody can hit the nail on the head like that guy sometimes. Sometimes he can nail it in a way that you're like, what do you think of Shahid Bolson?
I like him. I hate him on Syria, though. His opinions on Syria, I do not agree with. But that's about it. Other than that, I love his like tell it like it is. He's very blunt. I like blunt people, especially when we're talking about highly sensitive topics. And I really value that about him. He doesn't beat around the bush, and a lot of times he's like spot on. He was great for the entire Palestinian genocide. He was just coming out with banger after banger after banger.
And I forgot about old Danny Haifong. I like him. But here's the thing too about it, and what he said about Shahid. I can listen to Shahid on one thing and say, that's.
But I could still listen to him. I think he's great to just listen to.
That's the beauty to me of alternative media. I probably got people that say that about me. You know, I have Jody Brower on here. She runs she's in charge of the Communist Party of Great Britain. So there's probably people who are like, oh my God, Garland's got a commie on. You know what I mean? I think she's brilliant. I love listening to her. I think she's fantastic, right? I have a lot of different people on. So there may be somebody that doesn't like to listen to that. Or some other guest I have. Like some people are pissed at Scott Ritter right now. Scott and I are the best of friends, and I have Scott on every week. I don't, first of all, there are things that Scott and I absolutely disagree on. But I don't expect to agree with every single person about everything.
That's
I
the
can
point.
look at something and say, man, that person hit the nail on the head with that one. Ooh, they missed it with that one. You know what I'm saying? I think
That's
that's
the
important to
point.
be able to do.
That's the point. I actually I do the show with Nick. Nick and I aren't completely aligned on views. A lot of my viewers hate him because he's a socialist. And I'm like, that's what I want. Like, I don't want to be an echo chamber. I don't want you guys to just say I watch Sarah and all I get is Russian propaganda, or I just get Sarah's views. And then my show on Sundays, my co-host calls himself a radical centrist, which couldn't be less like me. Like, so I like that kind of stuff. I like that dynamic. And we got away from that for a while. Not we, you and I, but the general streamers got away from that for a while and became very, very echo chamber, this sort of like Tim Pool, all kind of agreeing in this panelist sort of vibe. And I'm glad that we're getting away from that. People seem to be have a very big aversion to people outside of their sort of cultural, political bubble. And so I'm glad that there's people like us that are sort of breaking that through and trying to expose our viewers at least to different views. I remember when I had Nick on my show the first time and somebody messaged me and said, I wouldn't even talk to someone like that. And I was like, I thought it was a racial thing. And I was like, ew. And they were like, I just don't like socialists, communists. I was like, so you won't even talk to them? That's where we've gotten. And so, yeah, I think that it's important to show like they don't fight. They're not going to kill you. We can have conversations.
Well, here's the other way I put it too. I work out. I love go to the gym, love to work out. And why do I do that? To make myself uncomfortable. The only way you're going to grow is if you make yourself
Yes,
uncomfortable.
that's
You're not
true.
going to grow if you're comfortable. There's nothing worse than a bunch of people sitting around telling each other how right they are. And so I always I don't really know much about socialism. So I'd like to learn. And there's only one way to learn. Ask socialists. Because people are like, communism and socialism is terrible. What do you think, Garland? I'm like, it could be. I don't know. The more I hear about it, I'm like, doesn't sound all that terrible to me if you really want the truth. You know what I mean? But how would I know unless I listen to people that are communists and socialists that it's good, bad, or indifferent? How would I know unless I listen to people? I spoke at this one event and the people were all libertarians, right? The libertarian did this anti-war event. I agree with libertarians on a lot of stuff, right? But they asked me and it was anti-war. I had a great time and a lot of them were good people. What's wrong with hanging out with people you disagree with? What's about some things and maybe agree with about other things?
I agree. I mean, I've done that a lot, and obviously, I am terminally online. I'm working on that though, guys. But I've made friends with a lot of like swaths of different groups, from Nazis all the way to Zionists. I will talk to anybody and just ask them their opinions. I go in every space. I'm invited on most panels, and I think that kind of dialogue is invaluable. I don't know many people that can say I can DM a Zionist and I can also DM a Groyper and I can get responses from both in a conversational way. That's important. That's important, especially since the powers that be, have worked so incredibly hard to keep us divided along whatever lines they could find, be it ideological or just the way we look. So this is important to kind of push that sort of stuff aside, not in a sort of rainbow coalition kumbaya way, but we got to get stuff done. We got to get stuff done.
To me, it was like this. It's an intellectual curiosity. It doesn't have to do really with what that person is.
No.
It has to do with an intellectual curiosity. Like, I want to try to understand what makes other people tick. Why do they look at the world that way? Why do they
Exactly.
feel
That was
that way?
how it got with the Groyper thing. And people were like, aren't you scared? Why would you want to talk to them? I'm like, I want to know why they exist. I want to know what this movement is a result of, or what was the catalyst. I want to know how they think. I want to know how they act. And I want to know what makes them tick. And that's how you learn about these things. Exactly like that we've lost a lot of that, a lot of intellectual curiosity, which is actually an innate human trait, to be intellectually curious. And so somebody putting a tamper on that is actually doing something unnatural to you. So you should always be encouraged to kind of explore the stuff that you don't know.
Absolutely. All right. Well, tell everybody where they can find you online and where they can watch and all that good stuff.
Just go to dgeopolitics.com. You can find us there. Please go to YouTube. We're shadow banned. If you guys could follow us and kind of engage a little bit, that'd be great, as well as on Twitter. But we'll see you guys on Sunday live at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern.
All right. Thank you very much, Sarah. All right, everybody. As usual, follow me on Rumble and Rockfin and all that good stuff. Share, share this on all your social media, all your social media platforms. Certainly, if you can afford it, if you can, whether it's PayPal or Buy Me a Coffee or Cash App or Patreon, that would be great. Follow me on Substack. Also, guess what? I now have my PO Box 32. So feel free if you want to email me anything. You want to email me a letter. Well, not anything, but you get the picture. Anything of reason, but like maybe a letter, a book, a magazine, just something you have to say. If you want to email me, maybe a donation, anything you want. I mean, mail me. I have them, and I check my box every day, and I got a bunch of letters. And actually, believe it or not, I actually do respond to a lot of the letters that I get in snail mail. Thanks a lot, everybody. I'm out.